and Nicola Beckford at 1 o'clock.
Today at 1, a man who's been in jail for nearly 40 years will find out if his conviction is to be overturned. Peter Sullivan was found guilty of the brutal murder of Diane Sindel in 1987, but new DNA evidence casts doubt on the case. Also on the programme, M&S says personal customer data was stolen during its recent cyber attack. They believe bank details are safe, but contact details and birth dates could have been harvested. Man's arrested over suspected arson attacks on 2 homes in London linked to the Prime Minister. Kim Kardashian arrives at court in Paris to testify in the trial of a gang nicknamed the Grandpa Robbers, accused of holding her at gunpoint and taking millions of pounds worth of jewellery. The costumes, the colour, the craziness. The Eurovision bandwagon arrives in Basel, ready for tonight's first semi-final. But who will win this year's contest?
In the Midlands, fears that green energy from landfill that generates power across our region could end unless the government intervenes. And canal-side controversy plans for a new Birmingham skyscraper that some have described as cultural vandalism.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the news at 1. The case of a man who served nearly 40 years in prison for murder is being reviewed by the Court of Appeal this lunchtime after new DNA evidence came to light. Peter Sullivan was convicted of killing Diane Sindel in 1987. She'd been beaten, raped and left in an alleyway on her way home from work. Sullivan maintains his innocence and, if this conviction is overturned, it will become one of the UK's longest-running miscarriages of justice. Well, our correspondent Tom Simons is outside court this lunchtime. What's been heard so far today?
Well, I can tell you that the judge in this case, the senior appeal court judge, Lord Justice Holroyd, is giving his judgment as we speak. I'm going to keep looking down because we are expecting his decision and the 3 judges' decision about Peter Sullivan's conviction really any second. But to give you the background, Diane was working at a pub that night. She tried to drive home. She ran out of petrol. She then started walking in the night time and someone attacked her. She was attacked with what was thought to be a heavy object. She was beaten around the head. She was sexually assaulted and raped. Now, Peter Sullivan was in his early 20s, early to mid-20s at that time. This is in 1986. And he was arrested. There was evidence against him, the police said. He was taken to trial. He had been seen at a pub nearby. He had been identified by witnesses near where some clothes were found burnt. A neighbour had said he'd borrowed a crowbar, which was thought to be a potential murder weapon, possible links to fibres, and he made some admissions. Now, the judge has said in the last few minutes that the decision of the court is that it is impossible to regard that conviction of Peter Sullivan back in 1986 as safe. Now, he's continuing to give his judgment, so we won't say that his conviction has been quashed, which I think is what his side is waiting to hear. I'm just hearing that we have just been told that Peter Sullivan, a man who's been in prison for 38 years, he's aged 68, has had his conviction quashed. He's in on a video link from HMP Wakefield. He is crying and he's being told in court that his conviction is quashed. Colleagues in court are saying there are people in the public gallery in court crying. And to give you an example of why this matters so much, this is a miscarriage of justice we now hear that is the longest involving somebody who is still alive. And to give you some more background to the case, let's have this from Dominic Casciani.
Almost 38 years in jail, now told he is an innocent man. This is Peter Sullivan, jailed in 1987 for one of the most shocking crimes of that decade. He was convicted of murdering 21-year-old Diane Sindel in Birkenhead on the Wirral. Miss Sindel was a much-loved florist and bartender, saving up for her coming marriage. Late at night in August 1986, her van ran out of petrol on the way home, and as she walked in the dark, her killer struck here on one of the town's main roads.
Diane was killed sometime around midnight on Friday, August the 1st, on Borough Road in Birkenhead.
So desperate were the police for leads, they went nationwide, telling the BBC's Crime Watch they had no idea who the killer was.
We haven't got any sightings whatsoever of Diane walking back along Borough Road towards the town centre.
Nobody saw who snatched Diane Sindel off this busy road and go on to murder her in this alleyway. And it took the police weeks to conclude that Peter Sullivan was their prime suspect. 37 years on, that conviction was thrown into doubt by evidence that had been gathered from the crime scene. New DNA testing pointed to another man. Peter Sullivan's trial heard he'd been spotted at this beauty spot where some of the victims' belongings were set alight. Sullivan admitted the killing to the police, but then retracted his confession. 4 decades on, the DNA profile that's overturned Peter Sullivan's conviction was obtained by the Criminal Cases Review Commission. In 2021, he asked it for help, and it forensically examined evidence taken from the victim, something it had refused to do 16 years ago. It acted this time after being warned it had missed a similar DNA opportunity in the case of Andy Malkinson, later exonerated of rape. This result means Diane Sindel's real killer got away with it. The unknown attacker was free, while Peter Sullivan endured one of the worst miscarriages of justice in British legal history. Dominic Hashani, BBC News.
And what is the significance of this? Well, you heard Dominic there mention the case of Andrew Malkinson. His conviction for rape was quashed in 2023. Many questions were asked of the Criminal Cases Review Commission that plays a part in deciding what cases go to the Court of Appeal and potentially are quashed. Now, in this case, it's been made pretty clear in this morning's hearing that the new DNA evidence, not new because it came from Diane's body at the time, is new because there were only new techniques capable of working out whose DNA it was that were invented in about 2015. Now, Peter Sullivan's team have fought a battle since then to get his case heard, so there will still, I think, be questions about whether the system is working for people faced with potential miscarriages of justice. And there is a review going on about whether the barrier, the bar that needs to be jumped to have a case reviewed at the Court of Appeal is too high. So that is still work in progress, and I think this case might well feed into the considerations around that review. But the other thing we should say is at the end of this, there is Diane Sindel, the victim of this crime, and her family, who now don't know who killed her.
Tom, outside the Court of Appeal, thank you. And there will be more analysis on that significant decision at the Court of Appeal across BBC News throughout the day. In other news this lunchtime, Marks & Spencer has confirmed that some personal customer data was stolen in its recent cyber attack. The retailer says it could include contact details and dates of birth.